So, guess I should probably make a part 2, right? Merchandise is a weird thing, because depending on how much care is put into making a specific product, it can either feel like a genuine collector's item, or well, just another cash grab. That's at least what I tried to do in part 1, looking at a bunch of good and pretty bad merch for characters up to the 3rd installment to the Five Nights at Freddy's series. However, now I have to do it again. I already have to stare at ugly things through the mirror, now I have to do it for every FNAF character. Part 2? Whatever, roughly the same rules as before, mostly just figures, statues, etc. And as always, please remember that this list is just a result of my bad opinions. Your best or worst merch for the character won't be the same as mine. Okay, ready? I think that covered everything. Oh! Starting from where we left off, Nightmare Freddy. While serving a fairly small role in the game itself, Funko really knocked it out of the park with their figure for this guy. Practically the whole line, but I'll get to that later. I mean, he's nearly 1-to-1 with how he actually looks, and even comes with a small Freddle. It definitely helps that this whole wave also brought waist swivels to the Nightmare animatronics, which, while still not much, helps with their posability a bit. But his worst? Come on now, I make fun of it all the time. The the glow-in-the-dark Nightmare Freddy Funko Pop is just... I mean, why would you really even want this? Especially now that there's a new glow-in-the-dark Nightmare Freddy Funko Pop that looks light years better and still looks like Nightmare Freddy. It doesn't help that the Funko Pop base itself is just so boring looking to me. No cool pose or nothing. Very generic. Moving to Nightmare Freddy's small children, the Freddles, there's really only a few choices for these standalone merch-wise. Being, of course, the accessory for the Funko figure, the Freddles in the McFarlane set with Nightmare Freddy, and this arcade vinyl figure, which is definitely the standout and probably my personal favorite for this character. While its design is way more stylized than the others, everything here looks fairly well done and represents what little we know about the Freddles very well. But hold on. Let's get a closer look at that packaging. Nightmare Freddy? Yeah, it seems Funko incorporated a lot of these two characters' elements into this specific design. Notably Nightmare Freddy's finger claws and the Freddles being basically everything else. Whether or not this is a chibi version of Nightmare Freddy or just a standard Freddle is up to debate, but I'd go out on a limb and say it's more Freddle inspired. Let's just say it's not the first time names have been mixed up by Funko. And for the worst, this is where it gets a little confusing. Like I said before, for them standalone, the only other options are the Funko accessory and the McFarlane pieces, which, let's be real, are practically the same thing. But that doesn't mean the Freddles don't appear in specific Nightmare Freddy merch. His Mystery Mini, for example, has a couple Freddles poking out of his stomach mouth. If I were to include these on the list, I would say the worst contender for Freddles merch has to be this ugly thing. That's right, the dastardly backpack keychains are back once again. Don't worry, you'll definitely see them a couple more times. Here, the Freddles barely have any details at all, and seem to just be smaller versions of Freddy's head. Just kind of stuffed in there. I mean, the whole thing sucks. Just look at it. Look at it. Look at it! Moving on, Nightmare Bonnie's best figure is again the Funko figure. What's more to say that I didn't already say? It's fairly accurate in its color, proportions, and main features. I will say, mine's arm can barely hold on anymore, but that's just a product of Funko's poor quality control on these things. This thing sucks, though. Funko's pint-sized figurines usually have this pretty consistent design that works for the most part, but for some reason they really dropped the ball for the Nightmare designs. Nightmare Freddy and Bonnie especially. Foxy's actually didn't look that bad. To the point where it's hard to even identify this as specifically Nightmare Bonnie. The colors don't match, his identifiable features being his gaping chest and foot aren't there, and no whiskers at all. He just looks silly. Nightmare Chica.
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.
While our Funko figure is again done quite well, I feel like McFarlane really stepped up their game for Nightmare Chica. Unlike some of the others, her features seem to be like 100% accurate and even have great detailing on the lower section of her body and legs. This being something that kind of irritated me with the other ones. Even coming with her cupcake and a small section of the right hallway's window, it's a perfectly complete package. The Snap figure, however, lacks a lot of these same details. To me, it almost feels like an incomplete product. Featuring bright yellow colors that matches Toy Chica's, completely drops the upper-lower mouth she had, and for some reason has no bib texture, like, at all. I do like the cupcake though, he looks funny. Speaking of which, this small cupcake's best figure is surprisingly probably the Funko Pop itself. I don't know, something about it is just visually appealing to me. It matches the cupcake from the game pretty well and even gets things like the weird texture for the light on the candle, like spot on. The Withered sections look good too, at least compared to the other ones. Which gets me to this guy. I'll be honest, I've never really liked its plush version. It definitely has to do with how they did the teeth, being this weird plasticky material they use sometimes. I feel going a full embroidered route on the teeth here would have made this little guy look so much better in my opinion. It looks cheap. There, I said it. It looks cheap. Moving on from that, Nightmare Foxy's best figure is, you guessed it, the 5-inch Funko figure. It's good. What do you want from me? Just being real, they really killed it with the second wave, capturing practically all of his important details and squishing it down to a 5-inch practical action figure that fits well with the rest of the lineup. I mean, what more could you possibly want? Well, definitely not that. If you visited a Five Below or Hot Topic searching around for FNAF merch, you've probably stumbled upon one of these things, being Tsunami's floating star keychains. They come in blind bags, and surprisingly, most of them actually look pretty decent for what you're getting. However, the FNAF 4 versions fared exceptionally worse for some reason. Nightmare Foxy especially. He kinda looks unrecognizable at certain angles. Honestly, I'm not even really sure the appeal for putting these types of monstrous character designs and charms like these. I just don't think it works very well. Despite how popular of a character he became after the release of FNAF 4, Nightmare Fredbear doesn't get a whole lot of merch compared to his other Nightmare companions. Like, there's not even a Funko Pop, plush, or figure. However, McFarlane sure didn't disappoint. It's a pretty good representation of the character and comes with a section of the bedroom, just like every other McFarlane set. That doesn't mean I don't have my gripes, however. You might have noticed the abnormally large head, and his legs have like little to no detail. But for the most part, it's pretty good. And it seems I shouldn't have said abnormally large head so soon because, speak of the devil, he's got a backpack keychain. Compared to a lot of the other ones, it's not even that bad, but this style has like no charm when translating it to these FNAF 4 designs. It's just ugly. You're ugly. Surprisingly, for how small of a role he plays, Nightmare has almost the same amount of merchandise as Nightmare Fredbear, even having his own McFarlane set. I feel if Nightmare Fredbear's best merch is this, then Nightmare's is probably the exact same. This time he's got a small table fitted with a lamp. And yeah, not much more to say, same issues as Fredbear. Hoping someday that we get to see some sort of merch try to capture that translucent effect applied to Nightmare. Kinda like how the glow-in-the-dark mystery minis work. I think it'd be pretty cool to see. Speaking of mystery minis, his worst probably is the mystery mini. Look, this is kinda all he has. This figure isn't even bad to mystery mini standards, but it's just not all that interesting. And the McFarlane looks quite a bit better. For Plushtrap, I've always liked his arcade vinyl figure as well. It captures his appearance from the game accurately and gives him a unique pose that radiates a small gremlin living doll monster thingy. I will say that the color here could be a tad darker, and a little bit more weathering details here and there probably wouldn't have hurt. But overall, it's still very good. And would you look at that, he's also got a backpack keychain. Yeah, this looks really bad, like one of the worst here probably. I'm not even really sure what pose he's trying to convey here either. Next up is Jacko Bonnie. For being a simple recolor of Nightmare Bonnie in a pretty forgettable DLC package, he's kind of become a small fan favorite in the community. Regarding merchandise, his best piece of merch has to be the Funko figure. It gets a lot of his distinct elements correct here, like his missing nose and endoskeleton head, which are mistakenly featured in both the Mystery Mini and Funko Pop. And yeah, he also has a backpack keychain. The side of his giant forehead here tries to mimic the nightmare decay, I guess, but it comes off looking like someone took a bite out of an apple or something. I will say the glow effect here looks pretty cool in photos, but yeah. And just like her brother here, Jacko Chica's Funko figure seems to be, once again, the best out of the bunch. Although honestly, it's not really hard to mess up the design here. Seems like they simply made Nightmare Chica a little more orange all around and filled her head with this translucent orange plastic. It even comes with her pumpkin, but it's colored more orange than the actual green melon colored one from the games, which is something you'll see on basically all of her merchandise. Well, except her Funko plush, which I think is the worst. It goes for a more stylized look among the plush line, but comes off looking more like a strange iteration of Jacko Chica instead. I don't really have much other to say than that, it just looks off to me. And would you look at that? Hex has also chipped in at their own version of a Nightmare Yon plush. Not that it's been done before, but you know. And like I said previously about their puppet, this one looks just as good, if not a bit better. Practically identical to the character from the games, wired limbs, and even LED lighted eyes, this slender thing is easily the best piece of merchandise for it. Funko's figurine comes as a close second, but I can't get it to stand, so... And honestly, I don't like the look of Nightmare Yon's McFarlane figure, like, at all. It just has the color of the face all wrong. Instead of having a stark white face, it's more of a brownish gray here, and also has a pretty lame set to go with them. But at least Nightmare Balloon Boys looks pretty good. Complete with a small section of the minigame room, he looks pretty accurate to his look from in-game. Even featuring the top and bottom mouthpieces, I'm not sure what to call it, that's such an important element to this character's design. Because when you take it out, it makes this character look pretty unrecognizable. This, mixed with whatever is going on with his eyes, makes this little guy look really unappealing. Next up is Nightmare Mangle, which is a bit of a toss-up. Her design in particular, I feel, would have been one of the hardest to capture in merch form. However, both Funko and McFarlane did a actually fantastic job with both the Mystery Mini and the McFarlane sets. Seriously, I actually couldn't fully decide on which one was better. They're both just that good. And his worst is, you guessed it, probably the backpack keychain. Now, to be fair, it looks a lot more like Mangle than the previous version. And honestly, it captures their likeness well enough. Definitely a standout among Just Toys' whole keychain line. But I guess that's not saying much. Now that we finished covering FNAF 4's main animatronics, there's a few other characters I want to get into. Like the sentient Fredbear plush from the minigames. With this character, in fact, being a piece of merch itself, it's fitting that Sanchi has made this guy's best. However, now there's two different versions of him. One being an earlier released limited edition plush, and the other more recent one being under their collector's line. Personally, while the limited edition plush seems to feature better coloring and quality control like all around, the newer version is simply more accurate to what this plush will look like in sister location. Now here, I think it's truly up to you personally, but this one looks just a bit better to me. And now a whole lot cheaper. Now what's this plushie's worst? I guess this. McFarlane's 8-bit Fredbear plush isn't bad per se, it just looks a little funky next to the actual sprite. Now, trying to recreate Scott Cawthon's insane pixel art style, if it can even be called that, to a Lego-like design sounds pretty hard. But it kinda looks like his head is too big for his hat. And for the bite victim, he's really only got like 2 pieces of merch, both being these McFarlane pixel art sets. If it were me, I like the bite a little better because it captures that moment nicely. Well, not nicely, I guess. And the one where he's just standing there kinda looks a little strange. So, yeah. Now on to the series' 5th installment, Sister Location. Wait! FNAF World. There's not much to cover here, but I felt I needed to mention at least a few of these characters, as they do have some merchandise. Specifically the Crying Child, which I neglected to mention in my first video, even though I definitely should have. And this kid's best is pretty recent too, coming from Funko's FNAF Fightline board game packs. It perfectly captures that simple arcade game design that is featured in so many of the games. And on the other hand, the pint-sized hero version, again from Funko, is just too simple to be effective here. I mean, it fits the overall look from the rest of the line, but like, come on, who really wants this? You can barely tell it's from FNAF anyway, it's just a blank body with tears rolling down its face. So, Fredbear. Again? Well, he's certainly not got a lot. There are a few pieces of merchandise that attempt to capture his design from FNAF World specifically. Mainly Sanchi's collector's plush and the Hex plushies. Notice the bluish eyes. And, I don't know, another close one honestly, but I feel Hex takes just a bit of the edge here, especially the cuddly plush. For what it is, it's adorable, and from looking at a few pictures of the Sanchi one, it looks just a bit off to me. I'd say the goofy aspect worked a little better with the actual plush it was trying to mimic, if that makes any sense. Just don't let these two get too close. I told you! Like Fredbear, Spring Bonnie's only got a handful of merch to choose from. Add on that we're focusing on the FNAF World design, and we've only really got a few. Hex and Funko, surprisingly. And I like Hex's the slightest bit better. I don't know, something about this style works really well for both Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Almost like you could see them actually being sold in an older pizzeria. Also, a pizza cutter as an accessory is pretty cute. However, Hex also released this thing. On June 16th of last year, Hex decided to sell a limited edition golden Bonnie plush, mimicking the cuddly plush design. While it sure is a cool collector's item, the material used here to capture the gold look is this vinyl-like material, which over time will likely be prone to creases, wrinkles, and deterioration. That's kinda about it though, looks fine otherwise. Other Spring Bonnie designs, specifically from Youtooz, capture this character's appearances in other types of media, like Into the Pit or just from the film. Speaking of Youtooz, can't think of a better transition. They've graciously provided yours truly with a few of their Withered line of FNAF plushies. Yeah, I know I already covered them last time, but shut up! While fairly stylized, as a majority of their products are, I actually think they look pretty good. Definitely up there as some of the best for these specific characters. I like Withered Freddy a lot. Also, really goes to show how outdated this video will be, probably in like less than a month or two, at least character-wise, but whatever. Thanks a lot, Youtooz. Now, finally, onto the series' 5th installment, Sister Location. Wait! The Twisted Ones. Yeah, don't worry, I almost forgot about these guys too. Now I know, technically speaking, this came after the release of Sister Location, obviously. But since that's the next big mainline game ahead of us, and it's a lot to cover, I thought why not cover the relatively small amount of Funko merch for the literal Twisted Ones beforehand in a quick lightning round of sorts. Ready? Twisted Freddy, best is the Funko Pop, worst is his plushie. Printed on acne scars are the worst. Twisted Bonnie's best is the Mystery Mini, worst being the plush. Barely even attempted his split mouth design. Twisted Chica, best is the Funko Pop, worst is the plush. Not really sure what happened here. Twisted Foxy's best is the Funko Pop / Mystery Mini, they're kind of the same thing. Worst is the plush. Noticing a pattern here. Twisted Wolf's got a pretty good Mystery Mini and a pretty bad plush. Stanley, you guessed it, has a great Mystery Mini and a god-awful plush. No, actually, what was the thought process here? Theodore actually has a fantastic plush and a not that bad Mystery Mini. And finally, Ella, who has a great Mystery Mini and a, well, that's a Funko Pop. Venturing downward to Sister Location, who better to start with than, well, Circus Baby herself, who's got quite a variety of cool merchandise to choose from. Whether it be the Mystery Mini variant, Fight Line figure, Jumbo Baby plush, yeah, I actually like that one, or even her Funko Pops, Circus Baby has fared quite well by companies such as Funko. Which, by no surprise, means her Funko figurine is probably the best. While it doesn't get everything completely accurate, it does a fine good job at representing this character as she appears throughout Sister Location. Well, at least the very small amount of time she actually appears there. And while the majority of plushies representing Baby do a fine job at capturing her likeness, there's also the good stuff plush. The main issue, if you haven't noticed, is the, well, giant misshapen head. Which also seems to be the reason her eyes are in different directions. Now, there definitely is a certain charm to how goofy these plushies look, but yeah, definitely one of the worst here. Baby's little helpers, the Bitty Babs, coolest piece of merch probably has to be their Mystery Mini. For some reason, Funko decided that their only Mystery Mini here would be the open-faced variant, exclusive to Toys R Us. But like, wow. They really crushed it here. Even though it's so simple, it conveys the jump scare effect from the games well, and looks cool enough for how insignificant of a character these things actually are. And look, whoa, another keychain hanger, whoa! Seriously though, the only other piece of merch this thing has is the McFarlane figure, and it's practically a perfect Bitty Bab. This one isn't even bad, surprisingly like the rest of the Sister Location series' hangers, but the pose they're throwing is a bit strange, I guess. Moving on, Ballora also has a very accurate McFarlane figure. For such a complex character design-wise, it captures her nicely. Ballora merchandise all around is actually pretty good for the most part, especially some of the ones from Funko. Well, except for this one, being the pint-sized hero version of Ballora. On the surface, it's fine for what these are, but if you notice closely, her eyes are actually open. I mean, it's fine, it's just one of the most important design elements for that character. I mean, how do you mess that up? And just when you thought Funko's Mystery Minis couldn't get, like, any better, the stacked mini arenas are seriously one of Funko's best products from their entire FNAF line. I absolutely adore what they did here to make these little guys stand out from the rest. Having two mini arenas piled onto each other while one sticks around with their signature pose feels very in character, I'd say. The mini arenas also have backpack keychains, one being a much more joy-filled dancing mini arena, while the other is a bit more sadistic looking. It seems the latter is attempting to capture their appearance specifically from Night 4 of Sister Location, where they were missing their tutus and had glowing yellow eyes. Personally, I think these two just look plain ugly with the huge heads, and this one's quite a bit worse. Without a doubt, Funtime Freddy is a massively popular character, perhaps the most popular from Sister Location specifically. But surprisingly, he doesn't have a lot of merch to go off of. However, Funko, with their Sister Location figure wave, probably just realized they peaked at their Funtime Freddy figure. While yes, I can already spot a few inaccuracies, it's flat out the best merchandise item of this specific character, with even Bonbon looking exceptionally well here too. But I'm not sure what happened here. Funko's official, yeah, this is official, plush of Funtime Freddy just looks terrible. Most of the design elements here are all printed on, giving it this grimy feel and like it's, I mean, come on, just look at it. This was obviously made during a more experimental time, I suppose, with Funko FNAF plushies, which definitely showed with the rest of this wave. Let's just leave it at that.
Ready or not? Hey, Bonbon!
On a more positive note, the Bonbon Funko Pop looks really good for the most part. If you took the black button eyes off them and replaced it with more normal looking ones, you'd have a pretty much identical looking Bonbon figure to the one from in-game. But honestly, they look fine on their own anyway. Kinda like how I picked the worst for the Freddles, most Bonbon merchandise is actually included with Funtime Freddy merchandise, because they're kinda, you know, stuck on his hand. So I decided that I'd also include these into the worst category, which means, you guessed it, the backpack keychain is the worst for them. Here, Bonbon's head is so bulbous in size that it's kind of hilarious to me. Funtime Freddy also didn't fare too well here either, so the whole package is pretty much ruined. What's not bad, surprisingly, is actually Bonnet's official Funko plush. See what happens when the majority of plush isn't just printed on fabric? Everything here is pretty much fully accurate and exactly what I'd picture a Bonnet plush looking like. And honestly, I can't in good faith put her Mystery Mini, the only other piece of merch for her, in the worst spot. Sorry. It fits the line perfect and looks great next to the Bonbon variant. Really no worse piece of merch here at all. What, I can't do that? Well, it's my video. I can do what I want. To change things up a bit, Funtime Foxy has a fantastic looking Funko Pop. Chase variant. I love that Funko went all out with jump scare variants for characters during this time, and this one is definitely one of my favorites for Funtime Foxy specifically. But like Baby before them, Funtime Foxy is a pretty ugly looking Good Stuff plush. Now trust me, this one isn't as bad as Baby's, but yeah, it's still pretty not very good. Ennard, that's a FNAF character in Sister Location who does have merchandise. Namely, a very good piece of merch is probably his Mystery Mini variant. While it may not make much sense visually, it seems to be a blending of the variants we see of him in game. But the detailing here is pretty phenomenal. Genuinely one of the best Sister Location items like on this whole list. But his Funko plush is probably one of the worst here. Now, we can ponder all day about why Funko thought it was a good idea to give him a large snout, or why his eye, or missing eye, doesn't match the color of his body, but nonetheless, this monster still can't escape my mind. And I have a feeling it wants to stay there. It's actually pretty telling when the Good Stuff plush is miles better than the Funko version. Like, genuinely. Wow.
I thought you liked me. I thought I did everything right. You must help us. I will find a way out.
For a little bit, I actually really like the look of their Funko Pop, and probably consider it to be the best here. The Mystery Mini is also kind of the same thing, but whatever. It goes for a more unique design, stands out among other pieces of merchandise, and captures their gameplay quirk well. But just try to ignore the eyebrows. Basically all Lolbit merch has some sort of inaccuracy here. Like the Funko figure! Look, it's hard to pick the worst for what's essentially just a recolor of a character that has a lot of good merch. Based on Help Wanted's gameplay, it seems that Lolbit, in fact, does not have a hook hand with their Sister Location appearance, making this one slightly inaccurate. And there's also just unpainted eyebrows here, when Lolbit straight up doesn't have any. And last, but certainly not least, Yendo, who actually has a fair bit of merchandise to their name, being Hero World, their Mystery Mini, and the McFarlane version. In which, once again, I can physically not name my favorite or least favorite here. They're all really good, honestly. Especially for such a character. Phew, I think that's it. Roughly every single Five Nights at Freddy's character spanning from FNAF 4 to Sister Location's best and worst piece of merchandise. At least in my opinion. Hopefully the final part won't take this long, covering Pizzeria Simulator to, I guess, Into the Pit. Wait, that includes FNAF AR, right? I have to do FNAF AR? You're making me do FNAF AR?